Morning. My name's Nick Moles. I'm the head of marketing at Wren, and today we're going to be giving you a brief presentation on redundancy and financial planning. So we're recording this on the 9th of June, and around about a quarter of the UK's workforce is currently on furlough leave, and some of the UK's largest employers, such as BP and BA, have announced some high-profile redundancies. So it's not a great situation for us to be talking about, but as financial planners, we need to be realistic about the situation and support our clients through what is undoubtedly a difficult time. So I'm joined by Alistair McNeil. Alistair's an advisor in our Glasgow office, and he's going to walk through some of the steps that you may want to take if you've been affected by redundancy. So Alistair, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Thanks very much, Nick. Yes, good morning. My name's Alistair McNeil, Independent Financial Advisor. Yes, I am based out of the Glasgow office. I've got clients across the UK, and I've got over 20 years in the industry.
Okay, fantastic. So let's start things off with I guess sort of how people respond to being told they're being made redundant.
Yeah, I mean, that slide there, Nick, is what they call a classic change curve. So it relates to a number of different scenarios, but basically what it shows is how people react to news of the likes of a redundancy. So there's various different stages that people go through in terms of how they process it and how they deal with it emotionally. And different people will go through that process slower or quicker than others, depending on their own circumstances and of course how they deal with things personally. Some people go through it quicker than others, and for me it's important to make sure that we can identify where people are on that curve and provide them with the relevant information each step of the way.
Okay. So after someone has received the news that they are being made redundant, what would you say is their first step?
Well, the first step for me, Nick, is just to have a conversation with the client and listen to them, listen to what they're telling me, what is their concerns, what are they worried about, and there's going to be obvious ones there that everyone has, but once I've understood the client's needs and objectives and what concerns them, I would tell them to go back to basics, get a piece of paper, and let's look at what we call a basic budget planner. So write down all your expenditure in two different columns. You'll have all your fixed expenditure on one side, so that's bills that you have to pay every month, like utilities, council tax, mortgages, loans, things like that. On the right hand side, you would put down what we would class as non-essential expenditure. So these are things that are nice to have, but they're not essential. And the idea of that is to try and get the client to understand they've been used to a level of income, how much do they actually need to maintain their standard of living, and if so, further down the line, what expenditure could be reduced or trimmed to try and help things fit and get them through that period of time. And when I'm talking about non-essential expenditure, that could be savings, it could be golf club fees, it could be other things like that as well.
Okay, and then I guess there's work to do around the actual redundancy amount and understanding what you're entitled to.
Absolutely. So I think it's important that people understand the terms of redundancy. If you run out and accept a job too quickly, you could forfeit your redundancy payment. It's also important for people to understand how the redundancy payment will be taxed. There's certain legislation out there that the first 30,000 is tax-free. The rest of it you pay tax on, and that will be determined on how much income you've earned in this year. But not only that, what we're trying to look at in conjunction with the budget planner is, with this redundancy payment, how many months could that help sustain the household expenditure? That's probably the fundamental point we're trying to get to. And while people might be in a hurry to pay off loans or debts, sometimes at this point it's good just to put the brakes on and keep control of the money until we see what the picture's going to look like a bit further down the line and your circumstances become a bit clearer.
Okay, and also typically when people leave the workplace, some of the benefits that they've been used to are obviously no longer there. What might that include?
Yeah, I mean, it could be a number of things, to be honest, Nick, but the sort of main ones are company sick pay. particularly big companies like we've mentioned that have announced redundancies recently, like BP and BA and Rolls-Royce and people like that. They had company sick pay that would pay their salary if they were unable to work due to accident or illness for a particular length of time. They might also have had health insurance through their employer. Pension benefits are a massive benefit that will be lost, and going on to a new job might not necessarily be replicated, as is the simple death and service benefit, the life insurance part of your employment remuneration. For many people, that will be lost now when they leave the company.
Okay. And so I guess looking a bit further forward, how would a financial planner assist a client who's coming out of that stage of the curve where they've got used to their situation and they're looking to get back into work? What would you do then?
Well, I think uncertainty is obviously the biggest factor here and the biggest worry. Now, we're in a position just now in a global pandemic. We're all working from home and there is a lot of uncertainty generally. You add a redundancy on top of that and that further impacts, it magnifies the feeling that people might feel vulnerable or isolated or out on their own. So that's why it's important for financial advisors now more than ever to be visual and to be available to speak to people and reassure them or provide guidance and help. But what I would say is, in terms of a future strategy, we probably need to have three. The first one is, what happens if you get a job in the short term? What's the strategy then? What does that look like? How does that impact your redundancy payment, your savings, your investments? And then you have guaranteed income coming in again, which will be a great relief to everyone. Strategy B would be, what happens if you don't get a new job on the short term or the medium term? What does that look like? What impact does that have to you? And when do you start need to making changes further down the line? And strategy 3, for some people, early retirement could be an option. So let's look at all your pensions, let's look at what you need, let's look at your age and your circumstances and do a bit of planning to see whether retirement is feasible or not.
Okay, thanks, Alistair. So just to wrap this up, what would be your summary for anyone who's just coming into this position?
I would say don't rush into anything. Take a step back, a bit of time to reflect. Use as many resources as you've got available to you to gather information, reputable resources. Look at your circumstances and what your needs are. Look at your budget. Look at your existing savings and investments, not necessarily just your redundancy money. Shop around as well. Don't just go and speak to one financial advisor. You have to consider and get a context of how different firms work, what different firms offer, what restrictions other firms could have. And also the age of the financial advisor that you engage with can be very important, because you're effectively putting your financial and your family's financial being in someone's hands, and you're hoping to go on a journey with them for a period of time.
Okay, fantastic. Well, thanks a lot for joining us, Alistair. I'm just going to leave with your contact details. So if anyone wants to contact Alistair about their situation, we'd be very happy to help you. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.